Dave Booker. I appreciate you joining me. Today we're going to continue on with Soleman the Healed Avenger. And the chapter we're going to be working today is the game is afoot. So let's begin. Terry was sitting in the shoe store lounge perusing the latest news. He was hoping for something that would lead to another adventure for Soulman. He found one promising notice. Someone was putting the boot in right and left. Reports were coming in from all quarters of an angry person who was kicking anyone who crossed their path. Their anger was intense. They were restless, never resting and never stopping. To Perry, this was a call to action. He realized that something was causing this person to act out in this fashion, and whatever it was out of the ordinary. After work, he dressed for his evening's excursion. For this mission, he added adhesive shoe inserts and sensitive areas of his trousers. It would be uncomfortable, but he felt the added protection would be worth the inconvenience, especially if he interacted with this booted maniac. At the last minute, he swapped his short shoe horns for a longer set. Some instinct told him that the others would not be as useful. He included a pair of rubber shoe inserts with metal bracing arch supports that would act almost as boomerangs should the need for distance work come up. He checked his improvements to the wrist projectile propulsion units he had customized. They could fire a succession of silver toe caps to incapacitate. The other arm held one for firing miniature hard rubber heels. Over time, he would continue to improve his accessories to facilitate his self-appointed war on crime. Finishing off with a couple of cans of special shoe and foot sprays, he was set for his evening round. Pulling a local map, he marked off where the latest attacks had happened. It was in a concentrated area, and from the latest reports, the perpetrator was still at it. He rushed outside and dove into the midnight stiletto, speeding off to Gate Avenue. Parking behind the Walk-On Inn Hotel, he skirted the building to emerge from the alley near the angry man. The aggressor was a surprisingly young man, clearly in the throes of some powerful emotions. He was stomping around, cursing and kicking anything he could. He seemed enraged beyond any normal anger. He seemed almost to be in agony. Sensing something was afoot, he looked at the man carefully as he raised his leg to vehemently strike at a waist receptacle. Seeing above the shoe's quarter and tongue, he saw that the foot was swollen and red. The shoes were smaller than they should have been. He also saw that the laces were tightly compacted. The black Oxfords were of a style issued to policemen walking a beat. His intuition formulated the premise that the shoes had been tight when issued. They had somehow gotten wet before this person had applied a wax polish. The laces had been triple knotted due to their excessive length, and when wet, had shrunk so the knot became tightly fixed. Realization dawned on him quickly that this man needed help desperately. This man was not only angry, but frustrated and in pain because the shoes were practically welded to their feet. Pulling a can of leather softener, Soleman shook it vigorously. Emerging from the hidden recesses of the alley, he boldly strode to the bellowing man. The man lashed out with his foot, only to be gripped tightly by Soleman's whip. Pulling taut, the man fell backwards and lay momentarily stunned. Soleman quickly doused the shoe in softener. It began to swell as the softener loosened and expanded it, the spray soaking it deeply into the dry, taut leather. A gasp burst from the man's lips when the pressure on his foot was momentarily lessened. Whipping out the shoe horn, Soleman pried the shoes off and then began to work on the other one. When the shoes were finally off, the man grabbed them and hurled them onto the roof of the nearest building with many curses. Soleman sprayed the man's feet with a cooling powder. It eased the man's discomfort and also helped with the stench from the forced confinement. Once recovered, the man sat up and shook his rescuer's hand. "I don't know how to thank you." Soleman returned the gesture and asked what had happened. The man sat on a curb and poured his heart out as he massaged his aching feet. "I was a policeman for all of 2 days. All that sweat and work to become one out the window over a damn pair of shoes. I got my issue uniform and everything was, pretty good. My shoes were a little snug, but they didn't support my flat feet. But they told me that wearing them all day would loosen them up. On my first day, it was raining, and my shoes got soaked before I ever had a chance to wax them. I triple knotted them because the laces were too long. By the time my shoe shift was over, I was exhausted. I turned in my equipment and went home. I was so bushed that when I had a hard time getting the laces undone, I simply laid down with them on and slept. When I woke up, my shoes had shrunk and were even tighter. Pain was bad, but bearable, and as it was a sunny day and warm, I figured that they would dry out and stretch. It didn't happen. They dried out, but became even tighter to the point I was in pain constantly. I became irate and began trying to get them off. I couldn't cut them off because they were official police issue and I had to give them back if I wanted a different pair. After a while, it was as if I blanked out and didn't realize what I was doing. I was kicking everything in sight. People complained and identified me so they kicked me out of the force. To add insult to injury, they made me pay for the shoes since I couldn't get them off. For the last 2 days, I was blinded by my rage. At least that until you showed up and saved me. He held out his hand again to Soleman. By the way, my name's Oedipus, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done for me. What's your name and what's with the fancy getup? Someone looked Oedipus over carefully. He had an honest face. He had a studious brow that intimated intelligence. His eyes held the gleam of a man of action, his lips marks of a man of determination. Though slender, he seemed tough as whipcord, with a strength that was kept hidden until needed. He had been trained in law enforcement in both mind and body. Such a man would be useful as a partner, and besides, after losing his position in such a way that finding a job might be difficult, he might need employment. I'll tell you who and what I am, but first I must swear you to the utmost secrecy. My true name is Perry Pederuski. I'm a man in search of a profession. As an analyst by nature as well as training, I've used my skills in a variety of jobs. None of them fulfilled me. I wanted challenges. I wanted to use these skills I have honed for the betterment of my fellow man. When I recently heard of a robbery and attempted to assist the police, I was shunned after turning over evidence. Their cavalier attitude, both to myself and the criminal investigation, made me try my hand at capturing the culprit. I figured myself out as you see me and created the persona of Soulman. By day, I work at a shoe store with plenty of time to see crimes to stomp on or people who require my services. Otis sat thoughtful for a moment, wiggling his toes and staring at his swollen feet. I'd kind of like to join you. Every good hero needs a partner. Otis laughed. Maybe you could call me Flatfoot. Perry gave it careful consideration. Here was the very man he needed ready at hand, and moreover, he wanted to join him. Otis was trained and would be able to ensure that their captures would bear fruit and be acceptable to the forces of the law. Well, that sounds good, but maybe we should just call you Flats instead of Flatfoot. Flatfoot might give you away as an ex-policeman. The two men shook hands and a new partnership was formed. Together, they chose the location to act as a base of operations, a long rectangle of a building that looked like a bit like a shoebox. Painted with gray walls and a black border near the roof, it became the shoebox, their sanctum from which they could prepare and wage their war on crime. The front was made into a shoe repair facility called Cobbler's Corner. For a couple of days, they outfitted with everything they might aid them in their battles with crime. Perry was adept at innovative design and construction, so he would create most of their equipment. Oedipus was a trained mechanic who could maintain the midnight stiletto and assist with outfitting it with crime-fighting gadgets. Oedipus talked with the police chief, who still respected him. Because of Oedipus's impeccable demeanor and professionalism, the chief still had a warm fatherly feeling for the young man. It was only due to public outcry that he had been forced to remove him. Oedipus explained what Perry and he were doing. He was surprised to find an enthusiastic reception to the idea. After all, Soleman had already succeeded where the regular police had fallen down. A direct line was installed in the shape of a shoe phone. Oedipus left with congratulations and an admonition to remember that once a policeman, always a policeman. and to act accordingly with the highest morals and integrity. Well, everything that is positive needs negative, so the next chapter is the wrong shoe can do terrible things. So that's, well, I made it through without having to need this thing. So that is it for today. I look forward to seeing you again in our next reading. Hope you'll be back again in another 3 or 4 days when we're doing The Wrong Shoe Can Do Terrible Things. Soleman, The Healed Avenger, is the book we're reading right now. So be good and be good to yourself. I look forward to seeing you. Hope you're back.